Welcome to the Omega Beam, the best sci-fi fantasy superhero movie and TV discussion podcast you're currently listening to. I'm your host, Oren Merton, and this week we're discussing the Disney Plus TV series Marvel Studios' She-Hulk: Attorney at Law. Don't expect a hard-boiled legal or superhero show. This is a legal comedy. Think more Ally McBeal as a superhero than an Avengers-style movie. If you're not familiar with She-Hulk, in the comics, which are created in 1986, Jennifer Walters, the lawyer cousin of Dr. Bruce Banner, ends up getting shot in a botched mafia hit and requires a blood transfusion from her cousin, who is, of course, the Incredible Hulk. In the show, it's a car accident, but the result is the same. Jennifer Walters ends up being able to Hulk out as a giant green superhero. However, in the case of She-Hulk, hilarity ensues, and for 26 years, she's been breaking the fourth wall and having fun with her condition, rather than having to save the galaxy every issue. So with that in mind, let's get into our conversation, which starts out spoiler-free and then gets spoilerific. Here we go.
We're here to talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe's TV show, She-Hulk: Attorney at Law.
So this is a comic that I remember reading, not when it was first introduced, which I think was 1986, but I definitely read it in the 2000s when I think it was Charles Soule who was doing a run of it. And She-Hulk, aka Jennifer Walters, had her own practice. Hellcat was her office assistant, Hellcat being a character that was part of the Jessica Jones series on Netflix. So I was looking forward to it because I have absolutely loved the character for a long time.
I think one thing that made us a little hesitant was the fact that it seemed like the CGI wasn't quite up to par with what we expect for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And even with sometimes it not being quite on, it still succeeds.
Yeah, the CG is interesting because it got an amazing amount of flack when they released their first trailer, but I was willing to definitely give it the benefit of the doubt because the first trailer, number one, is before they're actually done with post-production.
Yeah, it's CGI, computer graphic incomplete.
Yeah, exactly. So the CGI wasn't done, but also we were watching the trailer on YouTube, and YouTube has its own compression algorithm. So you've got basically a not full resolution compressed version of not finished CG. So the fact that it didn't quite live up to what we've seen in the Marvel Cinematic movies, I was willing to give the benefit of the doubt. And yeah, like you said, when your lead character is computer animated, that works for a movie where you've got multiple hundreds of millions of dollars of budget. It becomes a little trickier on a TV show, and with no spoilers, this is a fourth wall breaking show. You can see that from the trailers, and they even bring that up at one point, the cost of CG. So I think that the comic is a different tone than a lot of the sort of more heroic Marvel or DC comics. The series keeps that tone. I'm trying to think of what can be said, spoiler-free. They kind of set it up a bit like a sitcom. It's not quite every week is a different situation.
I think just saying that it's Attorney at Law and saying it's a lawyer show when it's not really a lawyer show because even the writers have admitted they're not really lawyer show writers.
Yeah.
And that's not where the focus really should be. The focus is on Jen and her relationships to the other cast or characters.
Right.
And also what she's having to do or how she's having to change her life to incorporate She-Hulk.
Yeah, and the comedy is in the character situations. Obviously, once you say a show is a comedy, you no longer have to have completely realistic courtroom scenes or anything like that because the whole thing is being played light. And that's fine. It was being played for laughs. And the lead actress, Tatiana Maslany, is absolutely fantastic.
And you never watched Orphan Black.
No.
but she was absolutely incredible in Orphan Black. We very much enjoyed her voice acting in Troll Hunters,
And
Three Below.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Tatiana Maslany, and being able to see her in something else that looks like she's having a lot of fun playing.
Yeah, and she absolutely gives She-Hulk life. Even when the CG doesn't necessarily look like her, she is clearly behind it, giving it life. It's her motion capture, it's her expressions, etc. And I think she absolutely makes the role, but makes the show.
She's definitely the correct actress.
Right. I think we can also give this spoiler free because it's in the trailer. In the trailers, if you haven't seen the trailers, I'm sorry this is a spoiler, but we cannot talk about the series, even in the spoiler free section, without bringing this up, that there's a moment in the trailer where you absolutely see the Daredevil costume. And yes, Daredevil is in this, not a lot, but he is in this. And the chemistry between Tatiana Maslany and Charlie Cox, between Jessica Walters and Matt Murdock.
The chemistry between Jennifer Walters and Matt Murdock is
incredible.
Definitely incredible.
Incredible. I mean, this is clearly a cast where everybody was in on the good time. You've seen, maybe, if you pay attention to the media surrounding these things, you know that She-Hulk was review bombed on Rotten Tomatoes. You know that people have decided they hated it because it's a woman superhero.
And what's really interesting is I was reading an article the other day talking about how the writers were really kind of proud of themselves because all of the content where that happens within the show with trolls, trolling She-Hulk and Jen Walters is almost at times line for line with what was happening in real life. And they wrote it years ago.
Right. It's embarrassingly sad how these online, nearly all male, misogynistic trolls have been beating the same drum for years and years and years, which makes it so sadly easy for these writers to anticipate what's going to really happen when a show with a female superhero star comes out. And they were able to capture that precisely, which made for some amusement where the Twitterati who are filled with hate, the gatekeepers, would all be saying a certain thing, and then you'd see that exact same thing, and it's like, okay, yeah, touche. I had read that subsequently the haters stopped because they realized they were becoming the joke. Or at least, they
are part of the joke.
Yeah, they are. But apparently some of them even realized that, oh, wow, we're playing into it.
They actually watched it enough to...
Right. Well, you have to watch it enough to properly hate on it.
No, there are a lot of people just
Yeah, some of them
it.
don't. They just review bombed it and hated it. So, ending the spoiler-free part of this, it's a wonderful show. It's really fun. The critic, Rotten Tomatoes, is 87%. So, 9 out of 10 critics liked it. This is not kind of hard superheroics. This is a comedy. Go into it expecting a light show. Expect all the things you find in She-Hulk comics. She-Hulk comics have such wonderful fourth wall breaking where things like She-Hulk will literally walk from one panel to another on the same page to save time traveling. So if you like comedy and you like comedy with superheroes, then this is absolutely something you will enjoy. I don't know anyone personally who hasn't enjoyed it, though I'm sure they're out there.
And you know what? Those people that haven't enjoyed it, you know what they've done? They just stopped watching it.
Yeah, you just don't watch it anymore. But it is a lot of fun. The CG of Jennifer Walters does get better, and sometimes it's fantastic. There are moments where you can see maybe the budget ran a little short at that particular moment.
I don't think it was necessarily budget. They probably just were short of time.
It could be time, could be budget, could be both.
And there are times that She-Hulk looks better than other times.
Yeah. But it's definitely a show worth watching if this is the kind of thing you like.
Just talking about it makes me want to watch it again.
Yeah, and it's not a big time investment because there's 9 episodes and each are around half an hour. So it is the kind of thing you could binge watch.
It probably averages just a little over 30 minutes.
Yeah. About half the episodes have end credit scenes, but half don't. So, yeah, It's definitely worth watching. 3, 2, 1 spoilers. So everybody was always wondering how many cameos there are going to be. And there were more than a few.
And Jen Walters does make a joke of that too.
Absolutely, because it's very meta. I mean, she knows she's in her own show, and she plays with that. She knows that the audience is watching this show because they love the MCU. It's played very much like we're all in on the joke. And I appreciate that. The audience is never played like an idiot. The audience is always a partner. And when we have cameos, she'll acknowledge, oh yeah, here's, every time, Wong shows up, it's Twitter armor, because people aren't going to be upset because they love Wong. But at the same time, they also give Wong a real part in the show that is fun and funny and excellent. So they're making fun of how...
And he's completely unfazed with the fact that what they feel he should do, he's going to do what he's going to do.
Yeah, he marches to his own drummer, and it's wonderful. And of course, one of the characters introduced just in a single episode, Madison, she ends up having this fantastic just rapport with Wong.
Yeah, I think just friendship, go hang out, watch some TV.
To the point that afterwards... The showrunner said her one regret was they didn't bring Madison back in the finale.
They brought her back for the end credit, one of the end credit scenes.
They brought her back for one of the end credit scenes, but yeah, I mean, she was just a ton of fun. And
is that the one that I think we read that someone really liked that actress and working with her? So they kind of wrote the role for her.
Yeah, I think it was the director who said that's like she's her good luck charm. She just brings her to every project, and so. Without telling the studio, she just had her audition, and she got the role, and everybody just absolutely adored her. But yeah, there's so much to love about this show. We get to see the Abomination kind of...
Well, Tim Roth, I mean...
Yeah, Tim Roth is always fun, and in the original Incredible Hulk MCU movie, he's pretty much just a straight-up villain.
And now... That is definitely part of the MCU.
Yeah, and we get to see him a little bit in Shang-Chi, where he's clearly playing along with Wong, but we don't get to see...
We don't know that till they leave.
The end of that segment. But then now we really get to see the Abomination...
And you know why he was there.
Yeah,
from this show.
Yeah, and you get to see him sort of become almost a Zen master. He literally withdraws. He withdraws from the world, becoming just sort of a meditation life coach Zen master guy out in the hills. That would be a very unlikely, even in a comedy, that would be an unlikely stretch from main villain, but Tim Roth pulls it off. I think he pulls it off incredibly well. I mean, to the point that in the finale, villainy happens on his property, and yet Tim Roth is able to pull off the fact that he really didn't realize what they were doing. He was in it for the money and for the life coaching. And you can believe it, because that's the kind of character he's been playing.
And I love the fact that Wong just comes and picks him up.
Yeah, because, that's the relationship that they have. And we'd mentioned in the spoiler-free section the Jen Walters Matt Murdock relationship. It brought some of the best action of the series, but also some of the best gags. And that's not easy to capture both, because one of the criticisms of people who liked the show but are just sort of Marvel action fans is you compare it to some of the other series, and there was not as much action.
I mean, I don't know why he wouldn't have put his shoes back on, but the fact that he's just carrying his shoes, leaving her place,
right,
just makes it very clear that he's doing like the. I don't even think he's ashamed, but people would call it the walk of shame. Right.
It was played for laughs, and it was done really well. And even when they brought him back in the finale, and he's just having dinner with Jen Walters' family, it was so just comfortable. And that's, I think, one of the strengths of the show, is that it's a comedy. It can be broad when it wants to be, but the personal relationships, like between Jen and her dad, and Jen and her mom, Jen and her best friend, those interpersonal relationships ring very true.
But I don't really know at the end, because I mean, like, saw an article saying Titania was there to help her at the end.
Uh-huh.
But you don't really know if Titania was there to help her or not, because we didn't get that far.
Yeah.
Because she herself decides this is not the way the show should go.
Right.
And we've had issues at times where one of us hits the remote, or the TV just decides to bump us out of the show and back to the main menu. And so when originally she pulls that and goes to the Disney Plus menu and pops out of She-Hulk to look to see where to go, before we saw her pop out at first or registered, we're like looking at each other to figure out, did you hit the remote? Did I hit the
Who
remote?
hit the touchscreen by mistake?
So, but it's neat that she's like looking for, how do I get to Marvel Studios from here?
Yeah.
And she's looking for one of the other shows that's going to get her there.
Yeah.
And it's just really taking the fourth wall down.
Absolutely. And that's a good place to also note what a wonderful sense of humor that Marvel has about itself, that it doesn't take itself too seriously. You know, Kevin Feige, who is kind of the architect of the general scope of the Marvel Cinematic Universe as sort of producer of all of it, he was apparently not just on board, but active in the fact that when everyone went to see quote unquote Kevin in the finale at Marvel Studios, it was a machine, it was an algorithm. And he thought that was the best idea, and he even had notes on, you know, what it should be and everything. And they were very, very willing to make fun of themselves, to make fun of what they are criticized
And I guess they were
about.
going to actually just put a ball cap on the machine,
Oh, that would have been fun too.
but they just wasn't working. That's why they just made the cap
The cap part of it.
the cap part of the machine.
It was great the way they had the algorithm as Kevin coming down robotically, and it was great the way they were able to make of their own kind of tropes about the superhero tropes, how they kind of Marvel movies tend to have an incredibly similar third act, and here we have She-Hulk arguing about that third act. So in a sense, they got to have their cake and eat it too. They got to make fun of themselves for the formula and break that formula at the same time by doing that. So they got to laugh at themselves while making a more interesting ending.
And, you know, Jen dating versus She-Hulk dating was interesting.
Yeah.
To, you know, if you've ever done any online dating, you can relate. And the fact that it wasn't just to have her try to do the dating, but then that comes up later as she has to prove that She-Hulk is her name.
Yeah. Yeah, they for a show that is light, they sure did manage to pay off bits that they start in early episodes in later episodes. I would say the one exception, you know, you had already mentioned the fact that it wasn't clear why Titania was.
Well, it wasn't clear why the Hulk would be there.
Yeah.
It wasn't clear why why Daredevil would all of a sudden be there. I mean, it wasn't clear why any of them would all of a sudden be there.
But it also,
and that's what she was.
It also
making
wasn't
fun
clear.
of.
You know, I think they could have completely removed Titania from the show. As much as I like
Jamila.
yeah, as much as I like the actress, and she did a fine job, she was the character who was put in because she's in the comics and is a very regular and well-known foil of She-Hulk. But her roles, she wasn't in that many episodes, and they could have...
Well, she did help move the story along.
She helped in some...
She got it from one place to another.
Yeah.
Like, she got Jen to the wedding, and at the wedding is where she met someone that was a love interest.
Well, did she get Jen to the wedding? I thought it was because it was an old high school friend.
It was a high school friend, but I think having her then there too just kind of helped move that story along.
I can see that, but I think they could have given that role to someone else and just had fewer
just like the dating
characters.
thing with her taking over the name and stuff like that. It helped for Jen to, I don't want to say necessarily evolve, but for her to grow into She-Hulk.
Right. And I think it also did a good job, not the Titania part specifically, but just the dating thing that you brought up. I think it one of the points of the show, kind of one of the meta themes, was how differently she is treated as a female superhero than a male superhero would have been. In fact, the penultimate episode, when she gets enraged because she's being shamed for, a clandestine sex tape made against her will. Well, the thing is that the first MCU movie, it's very well established that Tony Stark is a womanizer, and that was part of his charm. Nobody would have given him flack for that. And when women did give him flack about that, they became his future either bedmates or wife. So, he certainly did not have to suffer any ill repercussions for his dating around. And yet, here we see She-Hulk being shamed by it. And I think that's part of an overarching theme, that she is trolled, she is hated, etc., simply for her gender. And people saying that they don't believe that she deserves her superpowers. I mean,
and it's her gender and how she is treated that gives her the ability to control the anger much better than Bruce.
Right. That Bruce talks about how the rage monster would completely take over. And with her, the rage monster never completely takes over because she's had to live her life dealing with rage.
And Bruce,
already.
That's how he was keeping the Hulk in check, was just being angry all the time.
Yeah.
Except, she was saying women have to deal with that all the time.
Right. And, this is absolutely in no way a preachy series. But I think it does hammer home just through observation and through creating scenarios the really unfair stigma and criticism that, the character has to take, which of course then identical to the one that the show itself has to take. And it really shows you how unfair, how stupid it all is, how sort of samey and whiny it all is. And I think they did a really good job of that. It's never been official that there is going to be a second season of She-Hulk. I know that some of the people have hinted that there might be, but so far of all the Marvel television series, the only one I think that's been officially greenlit for a season 2 is Loki. I don't actually think any others were greenlit. And a lot of these series are limited series specifically because they're building stuff up for future films, etc. But I don't think She-Hulk is necessarily building anything up for a future film. Not to say that Matt Murdock...
Well, according to Kevin, it's not.
Yeah, according to Kevin, it's not.
Because she was excited because she thought she was going to, he said, wait to the big screen. She said, I get to be on it. He's like, no, not actually.
Yeah, so we'll see. There's definitely movies where Jen Walters could show up. I think one of the issues might be the tone, that they have created this comedic tone, having her show up in, this incredibly serious movie. If you can add
Guardians of the Galaxy to other serious movies, you can add her.
True. So yeah, we'll have to see, how they do that, if they do that. But I do hope they do a season 2 because we need more levity in our Marvel Cinematic Universe series. It's great to have a comedy, and this was a really, really good show. A really fun show.
I very much enjoyed it. I enjoyed the actors, actresses, just the entire cast.
Yeah, and it's a cast that clearly has a great rapport with each other. And that's some of the secret sauce of what makes a really watchable television show. When you have a cast that you want to keep coming back to, keep inviting into your house every week. And this was one of those casts. And this was one of those shows.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Golden.
You're welcome.
And that's it for this episode. You can find the show notes at theomegabeam.com/189. If you like this episode, please leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Your reviews help people who like this stuff find our podcast. If you have any comments or suggestions, please drop us a line at info@theomegabeam.com. Be good to yourselves and each other, and we'll catch you next time.
The Omega Beam. The Omega Beam. Full stop.